Hello, welcome back to Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at wisdom and intuition. We want to examine these two topics to see how they play off against our understanding of the law of karma and how to understand the choices we make and thereby our destiny. Hello, Sister Denise, and very warm welcome to you.
Hello, Magla. Thank you so much.
Wisdom and intuition. We hear words that are bandied about quite often, like trust your intuition, go with your gut feeling. Know that each person has their own inner wisdom. How does wisdom and intuition feature as far as karma and destiny is concerned? And very specifically, the choices we make.
It's about subtlety, especially intuition. Someone who's very connected with their inner world, whose mind is clear and clean, and who follows conscience, their intuition will be quite sound and quite reliable. And wisdom is something that develops with time. I think a person who is focused on cultivating their intuition and checking to see whether what their intuition says is actually right, because you have to validate your inner feelings by checking it against other more tangible attributes. Wisdom comes with experience, provided you process your experiences, provided you are all the time doing your inner work. It's a lifetime thing. And you may start out fairly wise, fairly intuitive, but they have to be cultivated over the years to be solid, to be reliable.
When you cultivate your inner wisdom and intuition, like you just say, do you do it solitarily, or do you get input of knowledge from somewhere or someone? What resource do you tap into in order to grow?
You know, there are so many writers, so many thinkers, philosophers, so many people throughout history who are preoccupied with truth, with wisdom, with trying to understand these very subtle things, that you have a great wealth of material. And I think to continue one's research, one's education, is a very important part of this. To engage in meaningful conversations with people who are like-minded is a very important part. To do your deep inner solitary thinking. Because these things are so subtle, I think very often you can't really track them. But sometimes it comes to you in terms of feedback from other people who will relate to you as a person of wisdom, or who will be interested in what your intuition is about something. When you're doing work by yourself, you actually need to find some very expert person in that arena to bounce off of in order to get verification and clarification. And this is why I think there's such a thing as the community of spiritually inclined people, because they seek out each other and they want to go deep in conversation to hear what different ones' take is on this subject or that subject, or you're faced with some dilemma or some circumstance or situation, and you consult with each other, just as maybe surgeons will consult with each other when there's a very difficult operation that has to be done, because you can say the business of developing wisdom and intuition is a specialized pursuit, and people who go ahead and get to quite a subtle and advanced level of it, they definitely will seek out others who are similarly inclined, because it's so subtle you could easily be off track. I think it's sometimes said, the line between genius and madness is a fine one.
Yes.
You don't want to be on the wrong side of that line.
Yes, one doesn't. In previous episodes, you have alluded to one's ego quite extensively. Now, when your inner voice speaks, how do you know it's not ego leading you down the rabbit hole?
Well, it might well be.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so good to have some people to verify and validate, because you see, you could become arrogant of your wisdom, and then it's not wisdom anymore, it's arrogance. But you're deceived by a kind of narcissism of thinking, oh, I've got it, I'm enlightened, I have the wisdom, and you really haven't, As you move forward in terms of spiritual practice and so on, you are surrounded by all kinds of very subtle tests and delusions and illusions which can pull you off track, and you have to be very sharp. And I think also it's really valuable to have other sharp people who can say, hey, you're going off track, you're getting off into arrogance, watch out.
Wisdom is such a beautiful virtue. There's this story from the Bible, isn't it? From about, I think it's Daniel. And when asked, what does he want? And his answer was wisdom. History and religious history has celebrated wisdom as being a very important virtue. And when in times of trouble, human beings tend to run and knock on the door of the wisest people they know for assistance. How does understanding the law of karma properly make one wise?
Oh, I think that it helps greatly, because it's so subtle, it's so deep, that you have to really do the work. And you have to also do the work on yourself to understand the philosophy of karma right, so that it eventually is going to make you wised up. When you begin a spiritual practice, it's often said, there's a little story to warn people about this, because you can hear all the basic information about spirituality and think, oh yeah, I've got it. And the story is, there was a mouse, and he acquired a little piece of turmeric, and he thought he was a grocer.
That's another way of saying a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Not just only a dangerous thing, but you have a little bit, and you think you've got the whole lot, and you haven't. You've just got a little bit. And so don't get so puffed up with arrogance that you think you've understood everything when you've only understood a little piece of turmeric. And the grocery store has all kinds of other things, and you do not realize how little you know.
What I've seen throughout my own journey is that you get those individuals who, irrespective of their age, have a desire to learn and grow, whether they call themselves spiritual or not.
Yes.
I must say, I have always taken my hat off to such individuals, because they do grow. That is such a beautiful quality. They have the aim that tomorrow I want to be a better person than I was today.
That means that they are very focused on themselves, rigorous self-inventory, day after day after day, and they will not disregard any little signal that says this is anger, this is attachment, this is, greed, this is delusion. They will really look carefully and work on themselves delicately.
I do so love that expression, rigorous self-inventory. Should that be a daily thing?
This term, rigorous self-inventory, comes from the 12-step program Alcoholics Anonymous, or there's many AA or NA or all these other anonymous programs. It's very good because it's about getting to be honest. You remember earlier when we were talking about blaming and criticizing and complaining, the key element is dishonesty. And in ego, the key thing is dishonesty. You're dishonest with yourself. And if you are daily making a rigorous self-inventory, you catch yourself where you are being dishonest to yourself, to somebody else. And if you work these programs together with other people, they will be like sparring partners, and they won't let you get away with anything. And that is your contract with them. It's a social contract. It's brilliant.
The right company is also necessary.
It's excellent. If you have a friend on the spiritual path who's, say, moving at your level, and you openly and honestly work together on your own spiritual track, this is very, very valuable and can help you move forward really well, because you won't allow each other to get off track. A good friend is the one who says, you know what, you're behaving really arrogantly.
That's a good friend.
Well, yes.
Okay, that's slightly different from other people's definition of a good friend, but please go on.
Well, you're not saying it to them to disturb them or distress them. You're saying it to them to draw their attention, because your contract is such that this is permitted in the relationship, because it allows you to see what the other person is seeing, because ego can be seen by someone else, but very difficult to see your own ego.
There are those who keep their own counsel, and then there are those who seek the counsel of others. How does one learn to trust one's own intuition? Because there are so many voices in the head and so many feelings.
As you grow spiritually, you become stable, and you're not ruled by unruly emotions, and you're not deceived by sense impressions and so on. You're growing for years and years and years, and you learn to trust yourself, so you can keep your own counsel, and you will be very, very choosy about who you open up to and take advice from. You will consult with people. You won't give away your power.
What does that mean, to give away your power?
To give away your power means, I don't know how to decide this thing, you decide for me. Giving away your power.
And what's the consequence of that?
They will advise you to do something that's in their best interest, but not in yours. Mistake. Don't do that. It's so important to listen to the voice of conscience, so that your conscience is getting refined and refined and refined. Then there's no problem keeping your own counsel, because your conscience is really speaking to you clearly. But people who disregard the voice of conscience, they don't hear from it anymore. So they consult other people and fall into traps. This is not wise.
There are those who believe that they are what they see in the mirror, which you've called in the past body consciousness, and they are those who understand that their eternal being of light, which you have called soul consciousness. How does wisdom fit into the picture when it comes to both of those way of being?
Well, what I call body consciousness and materialism will not actually lead you to this kind of depth and this kind of wisdom. But you want to really understand what you are, what makes you tick, what are the laws governing the intangible. It's going to take you further and further inside, and it's going to be rational, logical, meaningful, and intuitively right to know yourself as a spiritual being. And then you pursue this, you pursue studies connected with it, and you're engaged in life, you're getting experience, you're getting feedback from life, from people. And if you pay attention to that, then you will cultivate your wisdom. And I think your wisdom and your intuitive capacity gets cultivated in parallel.
God. How does one's relationship with God impact on one's own reservoir of wisdom?
There's two things. One is you have an interaction with God at the level of the mind. You keep a relationship with God. You include God in your decision making and so on. Secondly, you study with God, because God is known as the knowledgeable one, the giver of the third eye. So God knows incredible information and is making it available to humanity, particularly during this historical period. If you can get access to that and study it and develop a relationship with God, the teacher, and all other kinds of relationships that you can have, your life is all the time informed with your connectedness with God and your application and attention to the knowledge and wisdom that God is giving. You become a sort of instrument of God for that wisdom to go through you and reach where it has to go.
There are those who aspire to be wise and who would love nothing more than to be wise. However, they, like most people on the planet, are faced with the intense call of their dark side, who are dealing with pain and with their own trauma. How does one still grow as far as wisdom is concerned and still have to deal with your own darkness?
No one becomes wise until they've done that. No one. It's not an option.
Oof. I'm feeling it in the studio. Take us through what you mean and how one pulls this off, because it sounds difficult.
If you want to be wise, as your Bible quote that you gave us, it is an extraordinary being who reaches that caliber of being known historically as a wise person, you know. How many wise people are there in one city? Half a dozen maybe, you know. It's a very, very high aspiration. And so just the process of moving towards wisdom involves developing discipline, rigorous self-inventory, death of the ego, facing your pain, moving through your pain, meditating, gaining power, studying, developing, passing through many, many tests and experiences, going through fame and defamation, success and failure, all the different pairs of opposites, until you become a person who is really in their equanimity, who's able to hold their concentration, who is not fazed by any kind of surprise or test or whatever, who is no longer afraid of death, who isn't afraid of pain, who is, lives not just for the self, but for what is right. Slowly you move through there, and along the way many people fall away. It becomes too tedious, too hard, whatever. Just a few reach the top of that mountain. But anyone who goes along the way for any distance is ahead.
It's interesting to note that it is an ongoing journey.
It is, and I think a very important little aphorism is never give up.
On yourself?
Never give up on yourself, never give up on your aim to achieve wisdom, never give up on your journey, because, you're just on the journey, and stay on the journey. The journey is important.
Why is it that some throw in the towel and instead of seeing how far they have come in the wisdom department, choose not to go on repairing but write themselves off? Why do people give up on themselves, not just as far as wisdom is concerned, but as far as any virtue is concerned?
Because it's a long journey. You need staying power, you need endurance, you need discipline. It may be just too hard, it may be just too long. And this is why the sentence, don't give up. Even if it's hard, even if it's long, just keep going. Just put one step in front of another. This is also what is said to recovering addicts, just one step at a time. And it applies if you're a heroin addict recovering, or you are just a person on the track towards spiritual wisdom. The same thing applies.
Understanding the law of karma and all its intricacies, that itself is an act of wisdom, is it not?
I think it's really incredible to encounter the law of karma and study it and move forward, because it cannot be understood independently of applying it. You can learn it theoretically, but only to a certain point. It has to be applied all the time so that you really know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're just a pundit.
So when you speak of applying it, you're referring to words and behavior?
Behavior, applying it in your life situation, coming to terms with acknowledging that I'm in this situation because I created this is my karma, I must pay it, however expensive it is, I have to, collect the power and finish it and go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So endurance, perseverance, staying power is really very good in this, because then you don't give up so easily.
On yourself?
On yourself, on your practice, on life, on your relationship with God. Just keep going.
From what you said, I've gleaned that wisdom comes at a great price.
Well, anything really valuable is expensive.
And we pay in what currency?
We pay in the currency of self-discipline, of honesty, of keeping moving forward, of faith, trust, trusting that you will reach, trusting that you are with God, trusting that you've made a good choice, because there are risks. It's a risk to go on a path like this, because you don't know if you'll make it, but do it anyway.
Virtue has its own reward.
I think so, yes.
Well, that is a lovely note on which to end. Wisdom and intuition. Sister Denise has taken us through a broad spectrum of understanding what it is to become a wise person, what it is to trust one's own intuition. The best part of what Sister Denise shared is that one under no circumstances runs away from your past, from your pain, from your trauma, but you use all of that to grow and become wise. It becomes a foundation for your wisdom. A very powerful message from the mind of a senior yogi, something that I hope has embedded itself in your heart, and I do wish you a wise and prosperous life. Take care and goodbye.